Hi, spot on listeners and viewers. Today, we're going to just tackle this whole little math issue. People say, oh, when it comes to losing weight or managing weight, it's all calories in versus calories out. But what we're coming to learn is it may be more than just a simple math problem. So stay tuned and let's learn more. So, hi, all. I'm back, and we're going to get to the bottom of this with this calorie in, calorie out. And I have an expert here to talk about this and explain all this, why it's not a simple math problem anymore. Okay. Her name is Melissa Yeager. She's a registered dietitian, and she has a passion for weight management. In fact, she completed the certificate of training program in child and adolescents weight management, which is really unique, through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. But let me tell you who she is. She is the big kahuna because she is the nutrition director, head of nutrition at MyFitnessPal. And let me tell you, there's only one, and she is it. Okay. So, Melissa, I want to welcome you to Spot On.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to chat with you more today about this whole SECO calories in, calories out hot topic.
Yeah, that's what she calls it, Seco. I just love it. So she was interviewed in this article, and this is how I got this idea. As I read this article, I said, this is really fascinating because I know this as, a nutrition professor, registered dietitian. Other dietitians know this, but the public doesn't. And people always say, oh, the old adage, weight loss and weight management is just about calories in and calories out. And you know something, Melissa, you've got to set us straight about this. What's the story on this?
I think we have spent a really long time trying to simplify weight management and weight loss to a singular concept. And guess what? Scientifically, our bodies just aren't built like a calculator. It's not meant to be a math equation. There are so many things that impact our ability to lose weight, maintain weight, gain weight, whatever your journey is when it comes to this weight management. It's not as simple as calories in, calories out, because there are factors, things like our genetics, age, hormones, muscle mass, so many other factors that contribute to how our bodies either maintain our weight or lose weight. And so, with that being said, there's also more to weight loss than some of those factors, and I hope we get a chance to dive into more of that coming up. But when we think about calories in and of themselves, and this phrase calories in, calories out, not all calories are created equal either.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I want to tackle this because I remember my brother, who was just a naturally fit person, saying, "Well, why don't it's calories in, calories out? Just cut back on what you're doing." And I'm like, "Oh, if you don't even know the half of it," and yeah, and people feel like, why am I struggling with this? Why is it problematic for me if it's simple that? Because it is not that simple. There are many things that are going on, and you mentioned these in this article. And by the way, we're going to put this article up on the Spot On Facebook page so that you can read it more. But let's talk about, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. So tell me about genetics. How does this play all into it?
I mean, at its basis or at its core, we know through scientific research that certain individuals are just either predisposed or
Hmm.
more at risk for developing obesity. And that's something that those individuals are going to be approaching their weight management strategies different than somebody who maybe is not predisposed. And like you said, we can't pick or choose that, but what we can do is focus on diet quality. Anyone can
Hmm.
do that. And
Right.
that's where thinking about the nutritional density of those calories, the foods that we're choosing to consume, we still want to obviously fit in some of those fun foods that we love. We don't have to adhere or strive for this level of perfection that we oftentimes see in the media or on social media, but we do need to keep in mind some of that basic level of nutrition. Are we choosing foods that are going to give us the most nutritional bang for our buck, that are going to fill us up, keep us satisfied, help us meet our goals, get a variety of macro and micronutrients? Because at the end of the day, 3,500 calories coming from things like saturated fat or added sugar are going to look different than calories that are coming from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, those items that we know support our health and well being in the long run.
We know about genetics, many studies on this, but probably one of the most fascinating is studies of twins. And you take twins that were separated at birth and live in with a different, two different families and different states, different environments. And then as an adult, you bring them back together and they have basically the same body weight. So we know the environment clearly plays a role, but so does genetics. And there is a wonderful study going on, Melissa. I know you know this, about this, all about precision nutrition, where we're trying to learn about this, that based upon your genetics and what's going on, your metabolism, what diet, what nutrition would be better for you. So again, stay tuned because we're going to have more research coming on that. But you're right. So genetics play a part as diet quality. And you are spot on. I hate to tell you this, but you are spot on about diet quality. There's a little difference from pinto beans and jelly beans, you know? Um,
100%. You are
right.
right. And we say this because what even we found out at MyFitnessPal, we recently did a survey called Nutrition IQ, and
Mm,
we asked people if they understood some of the basics of nutrition, like what's in the food that they're eating. And we found out that 89% of people came back on this survey and said that they didn't understand what protein was in their food, what key nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. And so there is this kind of level of opportunity here for healthcare practitioners, dietitians especially, to go out there and continue to educate consumers on what is in the foods that they're consuming so that they can
hmm
choose the most nutrient dense best options for themselves, because we know that nutrition is highly personal
hmm
and it's going to look different for everyone. And so that's where having at least a basic understanding and awareness of the foods that you're eating, whether that be through tracking or food logging or working with your registered dietitian, having that basic level of understanding really helps you kind of know where to get started on this journey so that you're not just diving up the deep end and going, oh, I need to cut everything out or I need to change everything all at once. Diet quality is something that evolves over time.
Right. And we know, Melissa, that there's ways to outsmart your stomach and your brain, for let's talk protein. So what's the role that protein plays in helping people lose weight if they want to, lose excess body fat, or even maintain?
We know that protein helps in so many different facets in our body. It helps with a lot of internal functions that you and I don't think about on a day to day basis, but I think it's most commonly discussed in terms of helping to support our muscle mass, especially as you're going through a weight loss journey. Oftentimes, if you're not coupling that with something like resistance training or strength training, you may not only be losing fat mass, but you may also be losing lean body mass or muscle mass. And so, protein is one of those key components or nutrients that I always encourage individuals to pay high attention to, find out what their favorite sources of protein are in their diet, how can they incorporate them spread throughout the day, and especially if they are coupling that with something like resistance training, we want to make sure that they're refueling those muscles after they go through their physical activity or exercise as part of their weight loss journey, because we don't want to leave those muscles starving and hungry for what's coming next. We want to make sure that we're repairing and rebuilding any tissue that's broken down, and protein really helps to play a role in that.
Right. We know that when you lose weight, you're losing weight, you're going to lose body fat, but you're all going to also be losing some lean body mass. So making sure that you have enough of it in your diet and throughout your day, which you just said, is good to make sure you're synthesizing new. And so you're not losing it because we know, Melissa, if you're losing a lot of lean body mass, your metabolism goes in the wrong direction. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and that also kind of plays into some of that meal timing, right, too, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of how we're stimulating our digestive system and thinking through that. But at the end of the day, eating at more consistent times and spreading out things like our protein intake, like our fiber intake at meals and snacks throughout the day can really support our metabolism in kind of maintaining this balance or homeostasis that our body loves to have. It really hates when we start doing things like skipping meals altogether
Mm-hmm.
or avoiding things, because it sends our body internally into thinking about, okay, when is this next meal? I need
Right.
to start thinking about, holding on to some of these calories maybe a little bit differently. And we often hear people talking about weight loss plateaus when things like this happen.
Right. 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 Okay. Can you? I had a private practice years ago, and I specialized in weight management. And I was always used to say, over the course of months of dealing with my clients, say, oh, I think we're visiting the weight loss plateau and it's not a good vacation spot. So can you tell everybody what this is and what do you do when you're on the plateau and you want to get off the island? You know what I mean? So can you help us out here?
100%. This is incredibly common. And I found so many clients, like you said, going through this same tough spot. And they'd come in and they'd say, I've done everything. It's not working anymore. Help. What is going on? And guess what? Our bodies are really happy when they're in homeostasis and they really try to maintain some level of that. And as we start to lose weight, our body is adapting to those circumstances and the fuel that we're providing it. And as we lower our calorie intake, as we're losing weight, we go through a process called metabolic adaptation. And at the end of the day, it's how our body is trying to adapt and maintain and hold on to maybe some of those calories that we are consuming. And what we need to do is start thinking about alternative ways to really support our body in hitting the next level. And oftentimes it's through really small steps and really hitting that personalized nutrition home. Maybe what works for one person is not going to necessarily
Mhm.
work for the next. And that's where I love having that opportunity to, support people in better understanding what it is that they're eating today so that they can start to identify, hey, guess what? I haven't really focused on this before, but this would be a great nutrient to hone in on. Or maybe I could switch up this habit. Or maybe I could prioritize, protein and fiber here and there. I'm still looking a little low and I'm not really supporting my activity anymore. I'm not having the same energy I used to have.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's about making those small switch ups and habit changes so that you can better navigate your way through some of this plateau. And I think
And I,
sometimes people too, like you said, they're working out or they're exercising and maybe they're building a little bit of muscle mass. And sometimes they
right.
step on the scale and they're like, "Oh no, I've been gaining weight." But instead we are thinking about, okay, we're building strength, we're building muscle mass that's going to show up on the scale as well too, but we're still headed in the right direction. So sometimes it's about removing ourselves from that focus on the scale itself and instead focusing on other non-scale victories and things to celebrate.
I used to tell my clients to find a pair of jeans that are a little bit snug, and then we go through a thing, and so the weight may not be going down on the scale. I said, put those jeans on. How do they fit? And they put it on. They go, whoa, who? Okay. I said, see, do you need the scale? No, you need the jeans. That's what you need. Okay. So if as long as you're feeling better, you're building more muscle, you feel more fit in your clothes, all is good in the world here.
And
Diet.
oftentimes they're sleeping better too, right?
Oh yes. Can
You
you
heard
can you
people
talk
talk
about
about that.
sleep? Let's talk
Yeah.
about sleep. Oh, sleep and weight management and weight loss. Can you please talk about this?
Oh my gosh. Sleep is so important when it comes to your metabolism, right?
Mhm.
And our hormone regulation. And really, not only does sleep impact our insulin sensitivity, so basically how our body can respond to insulin, which in turn impacts our blood sugar management, but also it has a lot to do with our hormones and specifically like our hunger satiety hormones that people often reference, leptin and ghrelin. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you got to spend quite a bit of time talking about these hormones with your clients as you were going through this process. But basically, when we're lacking in sleep, well, our body has a hard time using and producing things like leptin, which is our hormone that tells us, hey, we're full. It's basically
Mhm.
the satiety hormone. But in turn, it also increases ghrelin, which is what tells our body when we're hungry. And it sends messages to our brain saying, hey, guess what? It's time to eat. And so our body is having to fight some of this, which can make it really complicated when you're trying to manage your weight. So prioritizing a healthy sleep regimen, focusing on getting enough sleep is really critical. And sometimes that can help us get over that plateau because maybe that or our stress or whatever it might be is part of what's also playing into that plateau stage.
Melissa, I know when I don't get a good night's sleep, and then if I don't get 2 nights of not good sleep, that third day, I'm ready to eat anything that's not moving. I am like starving the whole day. And I real and I say, what is going on here? And I well, if you got to sleep a little early, you turn off the Netflix, maybe this could be better for your appetite. And of course, we know that it is. So sleep patterns. Just going back to diet quality. I just want to also the protein throughout the day. And you said macronutrients and micronutrients. We want good diet quality because we want to fuel your body and also feed your body. And you can have a lot of sweets and treats, okay, and just maybe have less of them and cut your calories. But if that's what your diet is, it's just a lower amount of sweets and treats rather than what it was previously. It's not really improving diet quality. And things like fruits and vegetables and fiber. So talk about that and how important that is for weight loss and, more importantly, for weight management.
Yes, and I think you are spot on when you say even more importantly weight management, because sometimes that initial weight loss, it happens and that's wonderful and we want to celebrate it, but it can be even harder to maintain that weight loss
Mhm.
and stay in that weight maintenance phase. And this is where prioritizing how we're planning out our meals and snacks and thinking through our day so that we can still, like you said, enjoy those celebrations or those
Mhm.
treats on occasion that we love, because
Mhm.
it's all about, progress and not perfection. But at the end of the day, having that majority of our diet really pack in the nutrition quality and that nutrition density is key. So I know when I was working with clients, constantly trying to advocate for, okay, if we're thinking about making a small change today, is that small change in the field of adding a fruit or vegetable to a meal or snack?
Mhm.
Is it prioritizing when you're meal planning, thinking about where is that source of protein coming from? And then what are we pairing it with that contains
Mhm.
fiber? And fiber could be from things like beans, nuts and seeds, lentils. It could be coming from fruits and vegetables, whole grains. So there are a lot of different foods that provide us with fiber, but it's one of the most chronically underconsumed nutrients.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we know that, according to dietary guidelines for Americans, I think the stat is that, over 90% of women and over 97% of men aren't even hitting daily fiber
Right.
recommendations. And
Right.
so protein we know is important, but so is fiber. And so I always try and think about, hey, if I'm going to have this apple as a snack, could I pair it with some Greek yogurt? Could I have it with a piece of string cheese? Could I have it with a handful of nuts? How am I pairing that protein and fiber concept together? Because that's going to help keep me full a little bit longer and satisfy me until the next meal and hopefully prevent that hunger stage of
Mhm.
hanger where you're running through your pantry going, what can I pull out next and what can I eat next? And we tend to reach for maybe some more of those comfort foods or easy snacks that maybe just don't have that same nutritional density as some of those other really prominent foods that I hope we can include more of in our diets.
Right. When the diet quality is so important to keep to lose weight, and because they feed off one another. You got protein on your plate, okay, so that could help with satiety, that feeling of fullness. Okay, now we got a lot of vegetables on our plate. They're full of water and fiber, so they fill you up before they fill you out. You got a little bit of fat, those seeds you just talked about, and they're all working together to help you get the best diet quality to better manage your weight. And so it's really it's not just calories, it's how strategically you're using all of this to outsmart your stomach and outsmart your brain. And I think it's very important for people to really understand that. You said something to me that is really key. You talked about chronic stress. Can you tell everyone about how chronically being stressed may affect your weight?
It's so challenging. There are so many stressors in our environment. And
Really? Really?
really, I know. And it's one of those things that we're constantly having to navigate to figure out what is going to work for us when it comes to stress management techniques. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, what happens when we're stressed, our body releases hormones, glucocorticoids, things like cortisol. And
Mhm.
that cortisol is how our body is trying to combat that stressful situation, part of that, fight or flight instinct. But it also really plays a role in our metabolism and our
Mhm.
blood sugar management and our blood pressure. Cortisol just has so many different functions in the body. But at the end of the day, if we are chronically stressed and we're kind of repeatedly in this stage where our body is being exposed to more of these hormones, that is when things like research shows us that people start reaching for more comfort foods. They
Mhm.
start craving some of those foods that maybe aren't as nutrient dense. And
Mhm.
it also tends to lead to, in research, more abdominal fat.
Right. Fat
So more
storage.
fat
Yep.
storage right
Yes.
around that midsection. And
Mhm.
I feel like we talk quite frequently about it in both males and females, but it's happening to
Right.
everyone. And that is something that is hard for us to be able to mitigate because stress is handled so differently for so many individuals. But if you're feeling kind of stuck in that same plateau, that same space, maybe it's reevaluating what stressors are in your environment and how we can navigate that
Right.
because that is going to play such a role too. It's just like sleep, it's
Right.
just like our genetics. There are so many different factors that are playing into this weight management cycle.
I used to say to my clients, we all have stress. It's all how you manage it and you're going to release it. So either you release it on the walking path or you release it at the kitchen table. So which one are you going to release it? And so getting in the habit, I mean, that's a habit. And I had challenges with this when I was stressed. I loved cookies and I had to get out of that habit of when I'm stressed. I'm going for a walk outside in the air and, delay it. And oftentimes when I came back from the walk, I didn't need the cookies anymore. What I needed is to just release the stress. And nowadays, with home offices and people not going out all day long, can really, really feed into this. So it's like take a break, go for a walk. You can't work straight through, release some of it, and then come back. But I'm glad you said that because people with chronic stress, they don't realize that there's a hormone issue to this. And again, feeding into what's making this more challenging. Um, Folks believe oftentimes that you have to just increase your exercise to lose weight. You don't have to change any diet. Just exercise more. And tell us tell us about that.
Well, I think at the end of the day, hopefully we've seen the theme throughout this podcast is that it's not one lever that we can pull that's going to make or break this journey. There's a lot of factors that are going into it. And what we know is that in research, yes, they show that exercise can certainly support weight loss, but oftentimes, if it's the sole factor in a study that they're measuring and they're not looking at diet, the amount of exercise that those participants are doing is way more than the 150 minutes that are recommended to the general population. And guess
Right.
what? Only 1 in 4 adults are actually meeting the general recommendations for exercise. So, if we're not even hitting that kind of basis move your body general exercise recommendation, that's going to make it even harder for that to be the only lever that we pull in our fuel kit to really support us in our weight management, weight loss journey. So, at
Right.
the end of the day, it's a great resource. I encourage everyone to move their body however they can. But at the end of the day, diet plays such a key role, and going back to that diet quality and understanding your diet is what's going to really help unlock
Right.
and
Right.
support that.
So true. People overestimate how many calories they burn. Wow, I was on the treadmill for 40 minutes. And then they come home and they underestimate, what they can eat. And so there you go. As you just said, it's a good tool, but not the only tool. Well, I have to ask you about journaling,
Yeah.
and keeping. And when I was counseling, it was 100 million years ago. So we used to give food records. Remember these,
Yeah.
Melissa? Okay, don't make like you're younger than me because you're not. Okay, so we used to give these food records, and so people would record what they're eating, and then they came back, and as a dietitian counselor, what I'd say is, okay, let's look at patterns. Let's look at what you're eating. Maybe you're not eating enough protein, as we just said. I'm doing that. And I'll tell you something, and this trick I did, and this is our secret, so don't tell anybody. So when they would first come to me, they'd come for like a 15-minute visit just to get to know me, what kind of like my guidelines were or my strategies were. And I said, okay, again, I didn't charge them for that. I said, okay, let's make an appointment and come back next week. So I would give them the food rec. I said, just do me a favor and jot down what you're eating for the week and your exercise, whatever. And I said, oh, before you leave, could I just weigh you? Yeah, sure. Sorry. So I give them the fruit racket, and they would come back a week later, and I would weigh them, and they lost weight. And we know why, Melissa, this happened, but they thought I was just brilliant. But can you really tell everybody why they lost weight?
Well, when it comes to, food journaling, food logging, we know that those self-monitoring techniques are proven in research to help support weight loss. And that's where I really love even some of the more recent research is further advocating for these digital tools like
Mm-hmm.
MyFitnessPal because
Mm-hmm.
we're all connected to our phones, our tablets, our computer. And it's so quick and easy to be able to pop in and quickly record what you're doing and move on with your day. And I think that there's this kind of old concept where it can feel like a really tedious progress and process, but ultimately, even this some more recent studies have shown that people become more effective and more efficient at food logging over time. So if this is a
Mhm.
habit that you're able to build and use a digital tool like MyFitnessPal, it's an incredible opportunity to gain a better awareness and understanding of what your diet looks like. Because, like we talked about earlier, people don't necessarily understand what the nutrients are in the foods that they're
Right.
consuming or what their diet quality is. And journaling can help you unlock that. And so, being able to track and finding tools and features within the app that make it super easy can make it a kind of habit that you come back to again and again to be able to better understand and say, oh, okay, now I see what my dietitian is saying, or now I understand where maybe there's some room. I see I'm not hitting my protein goal every day. What can I do to increase that? And start kind of planning and focusing on next week from that launching point and that identification within your food journal.
Or even like for yourself, monitoring, as you said, like I'm starving. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm starving. Why am I starving? And then you look at your food journal. I know why I'm starving because I forgot to bring the salmon or the tuna fish to go into the salad, and so I had lettuce. I'm a rabbit, So I didn't have what I needed. Or you're going back. Wait a minute. I forgot to have blank with lunch, and that's why I'm starving. So it's great, and it's a great habit for you to do. And first of all, Missy, where were you 100 years ago when I was handing out these stupid food journals, paper things? I mean, now this is like a cool thing to do, and I've been on my fitness pal, and it is really cool. And there's many other things on there too. It's not just journaling; it's all like these digital, fabulous things to do there. So I just want to end this, Miss Guru here. So really, you don't really have to count calories in order to lose weight, but you got to do looking at the combination of the food you're eating, when you're eating. We didn't even talk about that. The timing, right? Eating more calories early in the day. Talk about that because we didn't touch upon. That's really important.
Yeah, well, I think you hit it right on the head. Having an awareness of the food you eat when you're tracking is so key. And like you said, you can see the progress over the course of the day,
Hmm.
especially in digital tools. We have our progress bar, things that are going to showcase and highlight what's been happening over the course of the day. So you can go back and say, oh, yeah, I forgot my snack. This is what I'm going to do next. Or this is what I'm going to choose next because I know how it's going to impact my nutrition.
Hmm.
And I think that instead of maybe focusing on total calories, you can focus on those key nutrients like we've been talking about, protein, fiber,
Hmm.
making sure you're getting a variety in your diet, because sometimes honing in on those nutrients brings you right to where your calorie goals need to be anyways, because we know that you're not going to eat exactly the same way every single day. Things are going to fluctuate, events, activities are going to occur. So you need to just focus on that kind of law of averages over the week, making sure that you're still hitting all the key nutrients that you need. But that meal timing really plays a role as well too. And there are studies out there that talk about, are you eating really late at night versus are
Hmm.
you skipping breakfast? How do these things impact your weight over time? And they all play a role. And so this is where I, advise against skipping meals if possible, because we want to maintain that normal, stable blood sugar. We want to make sure that you have the time throughout the day to get the nutrients that your body needs and be able to spread that out throughout the day. And especially if you are physically active or you're an athlete yourself and you're in a training regimen, making sure that you're having appropriate snacks to replenish and refuel those muscles pre and post workout so that you get the most energy throughout the course of your workout is really critical. So being able to navigate and use features and functionalities like food timestamps to identify, oh, yeah, I ate a couple of hours ago. I'm ready for a little snack. This will make more sense once I log it and see what it looks like, are all just part of how you can integrate and build out those tracking habits.
Right. So it's much more than just a math problem. And we have to look at the quality of the diet, the timing, the stress in your life, your sleep, and looking to fuel your body with good food for you to have better success at weight loss and more importantly, maintenance. So, Missy, thank you so much. Melissa Yeager, she's at the head of nutrition here at My Fitness Pal. And thank goodness I don't have any more of those paper food records, and I'm just using the digital apps like everybody else. Okay, so thank you again. Thank you for coming on Spot On.
Thank you so much for having me.